Lance walks into the Elite Four chamber with 3 Dragonite. Nothing weird about that, right? Except they're all under level 55. Dragonair doesn't evolve until level 55. This isn't some special mechanic or hidden feature. Lance is straight up cheating, and he's been doing it since 1996. This is the story of how Game Freak accidentally created a tradition of NPCs breaking their own rules, why they kept doing it for decades, and how players turned these impossible Pokemon into one of the franchise's longest running memes, where it all started. Back in 1996, Game Freak was a tiny company trying to finish Pokemon Red and Green. They had maybe 10 people working on the entire game. Satoshi Tajiri was obsessed with making the perfect bug-catching RPG, but they were running out of time and money. Nintendo was breathing down their necks to ship the game. When it came time to design the Elite Four, they hit a problem. Lance was supposed to be this intimidating final boss before the champion. A Dragon Master needed Dragon Pokemon. But here's the thing. Generation 1 only had one Dragon line. Dratini, Dragonair, and Dragonite. That's it. 3 dragons for the Dragon Master. The developers had 2 choices. Either make Lance's team mostly non-dragons, which would be lame, or give him multiple Dragonite. They chose Dragonite. But then another problem. If his Dragonite were all level 55 or higher, they'd destroy players. The level curve was already brutal, so they just made them lower level. Level 54, 54, and 60. Nobody really noticed at first. The internet barely existed. There were no wikis or databases. Players were just trying to beat the game. But years later, when fans started documenting everything, they realized Lance's team was impossible to recreate. You literally could not get a Dragonite under level 55 through any legitimate means. The floodgates open. Once Game Freak crossed that line, they just kept going. In the same game, your rival Blue has a Pidgeot at level 59 when you fight him as champion. Pidgeotto evolves at level 36. No big deal there. But in earlier battles, he has a level 17 Pidgeotto on Route 22. Pidgey doesn't evolve until level 18. Then came Gold and Silver in 1999. You'd think they'd learned their lesson. Nope, it got worse. Falkner, the very first gym leader, has a level 9 Pidgeotto. The first gym leader is already cheating. Lance comes back with his illegal Dragonite army again, but this time he adds an Aerodactyl that knows Rock Slide. This was a move that Aerodactyl couldn't learn in Generation 2 at all. Not by level up, not by TM, not by breeding. It was completely impossible. The Johto Elite Four was full of this stuff. Bruno has 2 Onyx that know Rock Slide through the same impossible method. Karen has an Umbreon with Shadow Ball before you can even get that TM. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. Why they kept doing it? You might wonder why Game Freak didn't just fix these issues. They had several reasons, and honestly, some of them make sense. First, game balance. Pokemon's level curve has always been wonky, especially in early generation. If Falkner had to use a level 18 Pidgeotto, new players would get destroyed. But a level 9 Pidgey would be too easy, so they split the difference. Give him the evolved form at an impossible level. Players get a fair challenge without getting steamrolled. Second, team variety. Look at Lance again. If he could only use legal Pokemon, his team would be 3 Dragonite at level 55+. That's boring and would destroy most players. By cheating the levels, they could give him variety while keeping the difficulty reasonable. Third, they honestly might not have cared. The developers assumed most players would never notice. This was before widespread internet, before data mining was common. They figured if the battle was fun, who cares if it's technically impossible? The technical side. Here's the really interesting part. The game has legality checks for player Pokemon. Try to hack in a level 10 Charizard through trading, and the game knows something's wrong. But NPC trainers, their Pokemon bypass all these checks. In the game's code, trainer Pokemon are stored differently than wild or player Pokemon. They're basically just a list: species, level, moves. The game doesn't run them through the same evolution checks or move legality tables. It just loads whatever the developers put in. This is why Battle Tower trainers in later games can have perfect IV Pokemon with ideal natures before players even knew what IVs were. The game treats NPC Pokemon as special cases that don't need to follow player rules. When players caught on, the internet changed everything. By the early 2000s, players were ripping apart the game code and documenting every trainer. Websites like Cerebi and Bulbapedia started listing these impossible Pokemon. The community had a field day. Lance became a meme. Jokes about him being a cheater spread across forums. Fan comics showed him sneaking into the game code to lower his Dragonite's levels. The phrase "Lance is a hacker" became common knowledge among hardcore fans. But it wasn't just Lance. Players started finding illegal Pokemon everywhere. Youngster trainers with Geodude that knew moves they shouldn't. Fishermen with Magikarp above level 20 that hadn't evolved. The more people looked, the more they found. Game Freak's response. You'd think Game Freak would be embarrassed and fix everything. Not really. They did get more careful in later generations, but they never completely stopped. Ruby and Sapphire in 2002 had fewer illegal evolutions, but still had some. Wallace's Milotic and Emerald nose recover through sketchy means. Diamond and Pearl in 2006 brought back some classics. Flint of the Elite Four has a Lopunny and Drifblim on his Fire-type team because Sinnoh barely had any Fire types. By Generation 5, they mostly cleaned up impossible evolution, but they replaced them with different kinds of illegal Pokémon. Battle Subway and Battle Maison trainers had Pokémon with perfect stats and moves that players couldn't access yet. Even in recent games, there are NPCs with suspicious teams. They're more subtle about it now, usually involving moves or abilities that are technically possible but practically impossible for players to get at that point in the game. Why it matters. These illegal Pokémon tell us a lot about game development. Game Freak has always prioritized player experience over technical consistency. If cheating makes a battle more fun or fair, they'll do it. It also shows how game design has evolved. Early generations were held together with duct tape and prayer. Modern games have better tools and stricter standards, but some of that Wild West spirit remains. The community's reaction is just as interesting. Instead of being angry about NPCs cheating, players turned it into beloved memes and inside jokes. It became part of Pokemon's charm. The games are slightly broken, and that's okay. The legacy. Today, illegal NPC Pokemon are mostly gone. Game Freak has better design tools and more Pokemon to choose from. They don't need to give gym leaders impossible teams anymore. But the impact remains. Lance's illegal Dragonite taught us that game rules are more like guidelines. NPCs play by different rules, and sometimes that makes the game better. It's a reminder that perfect technical accuracy isn't always the goal. Fun is. Some players even missed the illegal Pokemon. There was something special about fighting impossible teams, about knowing the game was bending its own rules to challenge you. Modern games feel more fair but less surprising. The story of illegal Pokemon is really the story of Pokemon itself. A small team making creative decisions under pressure, players discovering every secret, and a community that turns bugs into features. Lance's Dragonite might be impossible, but that's exactly what makes them memorable. Game Freak's mistake became one of Pokemon's most endearing quirks. Sometimes the best parts of games are the parts that shouldn't exist at all.